So let's start with just the one where we just twist the heels out and then twisting the toes out. So the feet not moving, but trying to. So here my two heels are trying to push apart. And then here my toes are trying to push apart. So this is the front closing and the back opening. And then this is the back closing and the front opening. So feel the opening here across the sacrum. And then here the sacrum tightens. And then just going down and up. This is difficult because what we're trying to do as we go down now is open both the front and the back. So my heel's going out, but my knees also going out. So this is what makes this difficult. But what you can do, as you start going down, you can open the back, and then as you continue, you can just get the knees going out. So it's always easier if you sort of separate, when there's two actions, if you separate them a little bit. And then just the breathing. So this is just the same exercise really on the larger scale. So this is the heels pushing apart, and then this is them pulling in, but just bringing it into the spine really. So we're just getting the spine to whip back and forth. And try not to lock the hands together. So just let one start and then the other one come in. And just bringing in a bit of a turn. Trying to get the turning coming from the action of the feet on the ground. So the turn, this turn to my left is the right foot pushing the ground, but also twisting out. So my toes are trying to twist that way. So it's basically the toes trying to go out is what makes you turn to the side, and the toes pulling round, but especially of this foot here that brings you back to the front. And then it's this leg that's twisting. So my left leg is now twisting and pushing the ground, which is driving me round to the right. And then I pull with this leg, but twist it this way, trying to pull my toes in. And that will bring me round. So we want to feel the two actions as being coming from the same leg. So my right leg squeezes out and then it catches the ground and pulls back in. So my left leg pushes me round to the right, and then it pulls me back to the front, and then the right leg pushes me round to the left, and then pulls me back to the front. Into riding horse, just check the feet, that those outside edges are parallel. The outwardness of the heels relative to the toes just helps the relaxation across the sacrum. Now let's trace the figure of 8. So we have two minds, a thinking, rational mind and an energy mind. So here we're just occupying the thinking, rational part, giving it a job to do that is very specific. So this mind is just tracing this pathway. And my job is just to keep the mind on that path. It can't leave the path. The more I can keep my thinking mind locked on a task, the more chance my energy mind has of opening up. So keeping this mind, the thinking mind that engages the world of objects, keeping that on this figure of 8, but now just opening up the bigger mind. So as I go around this loop of the figure of 8 here, then the energy mind comes out around the other foot. So something is coming out of me here. You can think of it coming out the shoulder, out of the sacroiliac here, and also out of the back of the head. So as I turn to the left, something comes out of my right side. And then I just turn back towards it, just very gently. And then something comes out of my left side. So we just want a feeling for the energy, a feeling for the things we can't see. So it comes out of my spine, out of my back. And then if I'm gentle and respectful, then I can roll it around me to the front. So the energy comes out of my right side and then it sort of pulls back in, and I use that pull to roll me round into it. So it's just the way we were using the legs to make ourselves turn when we did the breathing exercise. So the energy is coming out here. This is this foot twisting the ground like this. And then the foot twists the other way to pull me round. So it's like this limb of energy, this tentacle of energy has clutched something and pulled me towards it. When you pull the arm round, just let it come into the dantian. So effectively, we're tracing a figure of 8 again, but with the energy mind. So my rational mind is tracing this loop of the figure of 8, and my energy mind is tracing this loop of the figure of 8. So I can keep both minds working on it. It'll send you a bit crazy. Small price to pay. And I want the feeling that the energy mind is sort of leading the small mind. It's pulling me around so that I can see what it has captured. And now just bring it back to riding horse for a sec. Just looking down at the feet. And just try to get into the habit of sort of looking down from here rather than from here. It actually feels good to do this, and it feels really bad to do this. Okay, now let's try knocking the gates of life, this exercise. Sort of strictly the way we've just been doing this. As I turn to the side, it's just the same as the breathing exercise, really. As I turn to the side, my two arms go out. And then as I turn back to the front, they come and strike the min, meng, and the dantian. So This is the way it should be done. It tends just to be a bit sloppy and slack, but we want this bit here, the bit where you have to really tug to get yourself back to the front and get that strike. Just drawing the belly in, so just really tightening the belly and then releasing it. So when you strike the belly like that, it tones it up. It's very good for it. And this is just taking it a little bit further. So it's the breathing exercise, but really concentrating on just tightening and pulling in the dantian. The min meng squeezes open. And then they just reverse. So this comes out and then comes in. And then just back. And now let's push the wall. Just leaning on the wall and just bringing the belly forward so your spine, your lower back has a sense of being vertical. So what I realize more and more is that we don't sink. What we need to do is just really get into the legs. So I'm using this exercise. Ostensibly, I'm sort of pushing the wall. I'm driving forwards into the wall. But obviously the wall's not going to move. So what I'm doing it for is to actually drive myself down into the legs. So this is what I want to feel like. My push on, I'm using my arms like legs, and I'm using my legs like arms. So our arms are normally reaching out in order to bring something in towards us. And our legs are normally pushing away from the ground to keep us up and keep us walking. So here I'm trying to use I'm straightening my arms in order to drive down through my legs and into the ground. And my legs are just having to bend to accept that. And you can really work this quite hard. You can really push. Just move from side to side a little bit. Keep a bit of turning going. And just keep going until the arms get really tired. You can have the heels off the ground, but you'd like to be able to do it with them on the ground. So effectively, you've got two back legs. So my legs and my arms are fighting each other. And when it gets too much, just bring the forearms onto the wall. So you have to see it with your mind. You have to see the down through the body from the elbows, down the spine, across the sacrum and down the leg that you're bringing the weight into. There's a flow, there's a surge. And then back up. And now let's just lean with the back on the wall. Getting the sacrum on the wall. Your shoulders are slightly away from the wall. Again, you just twist side by side as though you're massaging your sacrum with the wall. If we leave it up to our relaxation to sink, then it's never really going to work. you really have to drive through the legs. It's not simply enough to relax through them. So here I'm driving with this leg. So I've turned this way to get this side of my sacrum on the wall. And I'm really pressing the wall. I'm using the wall to drive down through me. So I'm pushing in this direction so that the wall will push against it. And that's the bit I'm with. I'm with the wall that's driving down this leg and into the ground. So yielding, I'm with the energy that's coming into my upper body and is being filtered down to the ground. So how can I keep this pressure? Obviously, to keep this real pressure here on the wall, I have to straighten this leg. So I have to be working this leg quite hard. But at the same time, I'm allowing the energy to flow down through it, the energy from the wall, the force, more like. I have to relax the leg and push it and tense it at the same time. So this is what we call squeezing. So I'm pushing with the leg, but it's more like I'm squeezing the muscles close to the bone. And that oozes me into the wall, but it also allows the wall to ooze into me. This is where the squeezing comes in. Just come into riding horse, leaning against the wall. Feel the sacrum. And then let's come up. So again, outside edge is parallel. So another exercise that's very good for the sacrum is just lying on the floor on your back and just pedaling with your legs. And just, you really feel the sacrum just flat, and you can sort of do figures of eights with the legs, and then the sacrum will rock on the floor in the same way we got it rocking on the wall. So I start every day with that. Yeah, so just imagine someone has come up behind you and they're just pressing down on your shoulders. All it requires is just them to just bring their arms up and just rest them on your shoulders. So just the weight of their arms really adding to your own weight. And you'd be really surprised how it just forces you into your legs. We think we're sinking, we think we're in our legs, but actually we've just learned how not to be. So it's the same when you're meditating, when you're sitting there meditating on the cushion. If you had someone come up behind you and just press down on your shoulders, or even press down on your head, you'd really feel the sinking, and you'd really feel the strength that you had to bring into the spine to support that drive down. Okay, now let's try just this one. In the form, we have to get used to using the legs differently than we usually do. In the same way that when I was pushing the wall, effectively my arms and my legs were fighting each other in order to force this pathway through the legs down. It's the same here. I'm pushing the ground here with this heel, and it's just rolling my sacrum down this leg. It's driving me into this leg. So I'm using my empty leg to push me even more into my full leg. So the feet can't be too far apart, otherwise you can't get that push. So I'm driving down with the ground in order to push my sacrum down this leg. And this is all the way through the form. So as soon as you put the foot down when you've stepped in the form, it's very important that you just establish this tense relationship between the 2 feet. So you put the foot down. So this is the idea behind putting the heel down when you step. Put the heel down and then just really straighten the leg to drive yourself even more into the weighted leg. And then you've got a little bit of contra between the 2 legs, and then your movement just has power from the ground rather than it's just being upper body moving. So here I'm just really trying to and the time when in the form when you're most likely to break with the ground is when you take 1 foot off the ground. What you'll find is the other leg, instead of, the way we're meant to sink into the leg in order to pick the other leg up, we don't, or I don't. It looks like it. I think I'm doing it. John once said, progress at Tai Chi is a series of going back to square ones. So you think you're doing something, you think you're obeying an instruction or a principle, and then one day you just suddenly realize, I haven't been doing it, or not as much, not as well as I should have been. So now my energy is better. I can actually get deeper down into the leg and into the ground. That's just a visualization. Because I'm good enough now with my mind to be able to see this pathway, it's opened up. So imagination becomes reality. It's not enough simply to see it. You have to make it. You have to practice it enough that the clarity of that vision just burns this pathway through you. And let's just bring it back. Can't do too much of that. Otherwise you won't be able to do anything tomorrow. So the noisy mind, it's so insidious. Even when it's quiet, even when we're sitting there and we're relatively peaceful, we're still putting up blocks to the flow of energy. And that's what they call sinking into a stupor. So it's not enough to be simply quiet. You have to be open as well. Something in me springs open with the quietness. So it's not a quietness that's congealing and closing. Something in me becomes quiet and then ping. It's like someone turns on a light, someone turns on the spirit. Now let's try a bit of the full and empty. So again, my front foot. I've got to stretch the little toe. I'd like the feeling that my little toe is my longest toe. And then just filling from the ground. So this is just very gentle. Imaginative energy, if you like, beckoning this gentle mist or wave from the ground and then just letting it ebb out of me. Just start the legs working. The energy is coming up here, but this leg is really pushing to try and increase my weight effectively. Because in the sense, the heavier I am, if I can stay relaxed and open, the more energy will come up to support it. So as I come forwards into the front leg, the energy is coming up here, but this leg is really squeezing, really straightening to drive me down into this foot, to get even more energy coming up than my weight warrants. So same thing here. This leg is straightening to drive me down this leg. So this is definitely the feeling in the form, like your two legs are just fighting each other all the time. Yeah, so as you come into the front foot on bow and arrow, the back leg is really active because you have to push this hip around. Yeah, so that's another thing that I found that I wasn't doing. I just wasn't getting my hips round to the front when I was in a front foot posture. This really has to push this leg to drive this forwards, but this has to be pushing as well so that I don't just come forwards like this. I don't bring too much weight into the front leg. So this leg is trying to push this hip back and this leg is trying to push this hip forwards. And if I can get beyond the front, all the better. So how active does my back leg have to be? It's quite fierce here. As I come forward, that back leg has to get quite fierce, just to keep my hips square. And let's try a bit the other foot forwards again, just stretching out the little toe. When you really stretch the little toe, it will want to go out to the side. That's good. And then again, just start off gentle. Just start off with this just wave coming up. So here, this isn't really doing very much. This leg is really straightening to push this hip forwards. And then this leg is really straightening to push this back. So effectively, I'm staying square. Think of, Chen Manqing's thing of thinking that you're a car and you've got two headlights here. And you just want those headlights to just stay facing front all the way. So how do you need to engage your legs to make that happen? I don't want it to happen simply because I've locked the two sides of my body together and I'm just doing this. Because if I do that, then this will still trail as I come forwards. You won't realize you're doing it unless you look at yourself in a mirror. So here, this has to really push. And then here, this has to really push. And that's the same as when we're doing it with the heel on the ground. It's driving me down into this leg. So again, with the other foot forwards. And now just getting the cross energy. So as this comes up, I just want it directing into this arm. And I don't want it to come into this arm and forwards because I've pushed the arm forwards, but because I've brought the hip round. So the whole side of my body is coming forwards. So the energy comes up the front leg and then down the opposite arm. And then up the back leg and down the opposite arm. So the direction of the energy depends upon your hips, not on where your arm is. I have to push here to get the energy to come out in this direction. And then here I have to push here to get the energy to come out in this direction. So bow and arrow is actually really difficult. And the hip comes round, not because I'm pulling it round, but because I'm pushing it round with my leg. And then the other foot. So the energy is coming up here, and then I just distribute it into this arm, but it's directed, the direction of the energy comes from the hip. From the hand being here, I just reach down to the foot so I can bring the energy up the leg here. And then again, what directs the energy, what gives it direction, is the push here. Otherwise it won't go forwards, it'll just go out to the side like this. Just try and work from the ground. Yeah, so to sink, you really have to become quite intense. Something in me has to become sort of almost animal-like to actually get down in order to work from the ground. Again, just checking the outside edge. So now we're here. Really feel the connection with the ground. As soon as we stand still, whatever we do, whatever we practice, part of us is trying to re-establish the very thing that we're trying to break down, the ego. So when we come into riding horse, because there's a certain familiarity with it, we've already made it something that it shouldn't be. We've made it this sort of platform that I'm perched on top of. I really want to feel that it's this tentacle energy that's just really fierce and getting from my sacrum and down to the ground. So spirit is always the most important thing. So when you have a breakthrough, when you have a flash, an insight, it's always because the spirit has come up. It's never because you've, oh yes, that's interesting. It's never a thought. It's just a flash. It's a lightning flash of spirit. And suddenly you see, shit, I'm not sinking. If you're really sinking, you should be able to touch the ground. You should be able to reach it with your hands, or at least a tentacle of energy that's coming out of your shoulder. So it's, I'm really down. And then I have this really sort of motile relationship. These two separate feet are just playing. And then the energy that comes into your body from that is very different than just sitting here perched atop, thinking to yourself, trying to ignore the pain. So like all pain therapy, They all say the same thing. You've got to enter the pain. You've just got to go into it. You almost got to will it to just consume you. And then it just becomes something different. It just becomes intensity. But it's like a hunger. Something in you is just hungry for that ground, passionate. And then let's just bring it up. So now straightening the legs without crushing the sacrum. So I still want that feeling that my sacrum is hanging. It's like the spine suspended. It's a bit like a spring with a weight on the end. It feels like it's got a boing in it. So my sacrum can just reach down either leg. And then you just try to just straighten, straighten, straighten. But it's the straightening that comes from squeezing into the ground rather than from just using these muscles. So when you work fiercely like that, with a lot of intensity and a lot of spirit, that's what makes you soft. When you come out of that, you're sort of washed out. You're cleansed, like a catharsis. That clean emptiness is the softness. But it can always just spring into action.